The body was unclothed. The feet were bound with tape. Her head and her feet were in the same position. She was folded, over in half. David, weird. Oh yeah, he's a weirdo. Everybody know that. Do you have any direct knowledge of her whereabouts? I do not. I got up, and she wasn't there. She was 22 years old. She was a mother. She had 4 children waiting for her at home, including newborn twin boys who were only weeks old.
Savannah
She went out for one evening to celebrate a friend's birthday. She called her mother at 3 in the morning to say she was on her way home.
Her third and fourth
And then
sons were
she
born
was
on
gone.
December 1st, 2019,
No struggle
and
captured on
Shaq,
camera.
her boyfriend, was the
No
father
warning
to both of them
signs.
as well.
No dramatic moment where everything clearly went wrong. Just a young woman who walked into an evening and never walked out of it. And the man who was the last person to see her alive? He looked investigators in the eye, kept his voice steady, and told them she had simply asked for directions and left while he was sleeping. He said that for 6 full months. 6 months while her family waited. 6 months while an entire community searched. 6 months while her babies grew up, not knowing where their mother was. And the whole time, he knew exactly where she was. Right now, before we go a single second further into this story, I want you to do something for me. Go to the comments right now and tell me, where in the world are you watching this from? And what time is it over there as you are sitting and watching this? Because this channel reaches people I never expected, in cities and countries I sometimes cannot believe. And I genuinely want to know who is here with me for this one. Drop your location and your time in the comments right now. I will be reading every single one. Welcome to Motives and Methods. My name is your host. And today we are covering one of the most quietly devastating true crime cases to come out of the state of Kentucky in recent memory. A case where the evidence was hiding in plain sight. A case where the killer was identified almost immediately, and yet managed to stay free for months. A case that ended in a guilty plea, a prison sentence, and a family left with questions that will never be answered. This is the case of Savannah Spurlock. Stay with me for every part of this, because every part of it matters. To truly understand what happened on the night of the 3rd of January, 2019, you have to first understand who Savannah Spurlock was as a person. Because this was not just a victim, this was a full human being with a life, a family, a history, and people who loved her deeply. Savannah was born on the 5th of February, 1996, in Madison County, Kentucky. She grew up there. She went to school there. She graduated from Madison Central High School in 2014, and she went on to study at Eastern Kentucky University. She worked across the restaurant industry and had a genuine love for lifeguarding. She was the kind of person who could walk into a room full of strangers and within 20 minutes know half of them by name. Warm, easy to talk to, real. And by January of 2019, Savannah was also a mother. 4 times over. 4 children. And the youngest of them, twin baby boys, had been born just weeks before this night. Just weeks. Those babies were still in that early newborn stage where every single day feels enormous and exhausting and beautiful all at once. Savannah had just been through that. She was in the thick of it. And so, on the rare occasion that she had a babysitter arranged and a few hours to call her own, it meant something real. Friends and family described her consistently in the same way. She was responsible. If anything, the people closest to her. If anything, the people closest to her said the opposite was true. She was more likely to cut a night short out of guilt about being away from her kids than she was to stay out longer than planned. So, when she arranged that babysitter and made the drive over to Lexington on the evening of the 3rd of January to celebrate a close friend's birthday over dinner and drinks, nobody worried. Nobody had any reason to. It was a rare, normal, well-deserved night out. She planned to stay a few hours and be back before morning, and for the first part of that evening, everything went exactly as it was supposed to. Lexington, Kentucky, on the evening of the 3rd of January, 2019. Savannah and her friend moved between bars, shared drinks, talked and laughed the way you do on a night when you finally get a few hours away from your responsibilities. Multiple witnesses who were out that same night later described Savannah as relaxed and in good spirits. Happy, social, completely at ease. No visible signs of distress. Nothing that would make you look twice. Everything was fine. And then, slowly, the evening began to unravel. First, one of her friends had to leave. Early shift the next morning. She could not stay. And then, as the night rolled on, something happened between Savannah and her remaining companion. An argument. A falling out. The exact nature of what was said between them has never been fully disclosed publicly, but the outcome is clear. That friend left the bar, walked out, and Savannah was left standing there alone. Alone in Lexington, in the early hours of the morning. A city that was not her own. And now, and I want you to think about this for a moment, what would you do in that situation? You have a babysitter at home. The night is still going. You are not ready to call it yet. And so, you do what most people would do. You stay. You order another drink. You turn to the people around you and you start talking. That is exactly what Savannah did. Over the next couple of hours, she mingled with other people at the bar. She was social, she was friendly, and she was doing what social, friendly people do on a night out. She made new friends, or at least she thought she did. At approximately 2:30 in the morning, a surveillance camera mounted outside the bar captured something. It captured Savannah standing outside with 3 men. 3 men she had met that very evening and did not know before that night. And here's the thing I need you to understand about that footage. Because people have analyzed it. Investigators studied it. News outlets reported on it. And the consistent description of what it shows is this. Nothing alarming, nothing forced, nothing that screams danger. Savannah looks relaxed in that footage. She looks comfortable. The body language between her and the 3 men looks easy and casual and ordinary. They talk for a short time outside, and then all 4 of them climb into a vehicle together, and they drive away. No struggle, no hesitation, no visible moment where something felt wrong. Just 4 people getting into a car on a cold January night. 30 minutes after that footage was recorded, at approximately 3 in the morning, Savannah called her mother. She told her she was in Lexington. She said she was doing fine. She said she would be home later that morning. Nothing in her voice suggested anything was wrong. She sounded like herself. She sounded calm. Her mother had no reason to worry. She said goodbye. And that was the last time anyone who loved Savannah Spurlock would hear her voice. Because after that call, her phone went completely silent. No more calls, no texts, no social media activity, nothing at all. As if someone had simply switched her off. By 7 o'clock on the evening of the 4th of January, 2019, Savannah had still not come home. She had not called, she had not messaged, she had not reached out in any way to anyone. And, for a woman with 4 children at home, including newborn twins who needed their mother, that silence was not just unusual, it was alarming. Her family contacted the police, and as investigators began pulling together what they had, the timeline, the phone records, the surveillance footage, a clear and troubling picture started to form. The last confirmed sighting of Savannah alive was on that camera footage at 2:30 in the morning. She was with 3 men. Men she had only just met. Men whose names nobody in Savannah's life knew. and she had gotten into a vehicle with them and driven away to an unknown location. That is what police were working with at the start. Now, at the same time that investigators were doing their work, Savannah's family and the broader community were doing their own. Search parties formed across Richmond and all of the surrounding counties. Volunteers, ordinary people, neighbors, strangers who just wanted to help, came out in numbers that were genuinely moving. They covered roads, they scanned wooded areas, they walked through open fields. They searched anywhere and everywhere that felt like it could be relevant, all desperately hoping for some trace of where Savannah had gone after leaving that bar. And while all of that was happening, while all of those people were out there giving their time and their energy in the cold Kentucky winter, investigators were quietly piecing together who the three men in the footage actually were. And eventually, they got there. The vehicle captured on the surveillance camera was traced to a man named David Sparks. Once David Sparks and the other two men were identified, police brought them all in for questioning separately. And when those individual statements were collected and laid out together, a picture began to emerge that made investigators deeply uncomfortable. All three men confirmed the same basic sequence of events. After leaving the bar in Lexington in the early hours of the 4th of January, the group, David, the other two men, and Savannah, had driven together to a rural home in Garrard County, roughly 40 miles south of the bar where they had all met. Now, pay attention to that detail. 40 miles south. Because Savannah's home was not in that direction. Garrard County was not on the way back to Richmond. Savannah had no personal reason to be traveling in that direction. And yet she went. The two other men stated that at some point during the early morning hours, they left David's house and went home. When they left, Savannah was still there, still inside the house, alone with David. And when officers asked those two men, plainly and directly, whether they believed David could have hurt Savannah, neither of them offered the kind of reassurance you might hope to hear from a man's friends. If he hurt that girl? Yeah? What did he tell you? I feel like he eventually would. He's adamant he don't know nothing. I told him, bro, you need to be 100% because she was left at your house. Me and him left. So, whatever happened after that, you need to man up and say what needs to be said. David, weird. Oh yeah, he's a weirdo, everybody know that. He's got unorthodox thinking. Certain things he does is just different. Now, when David himself sat down with investigators and was asked what had happened on the night Savannah disappeared, his answer was composed, unhurried, delivered without apparent distress. He said that Savannah had woken him in the early hours of the morning. She asked him where she was, as though getting her bearings, figuring out where she had ended up. He said he told her, gave her directions, and then fell back to sleep. And when he finally woke up again, near midday, she was already gone. Door had been unlocked. She had simply left. Do you have any direct knowledge of the whereabouts of Savannah? I do not. I got up and she wasn't there. My door was unlocked. And she was gone. Has it crossed your mind that she may not be alive? That has crossed my mind, but I hope she's all right. I hope she's all right. Investigators were not convinced, not by the story, not by the delivery, not by any part of it. And so they obtained search warrants for David's property, for his home, and for his parents' farm, located just down the road from where David lived. Cadaver dogs were brought in, forensic teams arrived and got to work. Buildings were searched floor to ceiling. Gardens were turned over. Boundaries were walked. Even the strawberry patches on the property were examined. Nothing was found. And that is where the case sat for a deeply painful stretch of time. Weeks passed with no breakthrough. Then those weeks became months. Savannah's phone remained inactive. Her social media accounts showed no signs of life. There were no verified sightings of her anywhere. The tips that came in led nowhere meaningful. The community searches continued but found nothing of substance. Apart from one small, eerie detail, a scrap of red fabric, discovered out in the countryside, that looked disturbingly similar to the dress Savannah had been wearing the night she disappeared. But even that led to no resolution. And all the while, her family lived in that impossible in-between space. Not knowing, not being able to grieve properly, not being able to accept or move forward, just waiting and hoping and slowly watching hope erode. Her name hung over those communities like something unresolved, like an open wound. Where was Savannah Spurlock? 6 months. That is how long this went on. 6 full months from the night Savannah disappeared to the moment everything finally broke open. And when it did break open, when the answer finally came, it came not from a new witness or a surveillance camera or a tip line call. It came from the earth itself. It was July of 2019. Summer had arrived fully in Kentucky. The heat had settled in. And on the Sparks family farm, the same property that police had already visited with cadaver dogs and search teams months earlier, something was changing. David's parents began to notice a smell. Not faint. Not something that could be explained away as an animal or something natural in the surrounding fields. This was strong, pervasive, growing stronger as the summer heat intensified, coming from their own land, from the ground itself. Anyone who has ever been near the smell of human decomposition will tell you the same thing. You do not confuse it with anything else. You do not rationalize it away. Your body knows what that smell means before your mind is ready to accept it. And David's parents knew. Here is the part of this story that I find genuinely remarkable, and I think it deserves to be acknowledged directly. David's own parents, knowing full well what calling the police could mean for their son, contacted the authorities. They made that call. Forensic officers returned to the farm. This time, they focused their attention on the strawberry patch, the precise area where the smell was at its most intense, a place that had already been investigated, a place that dogs had already worked over months before. But this time, the outcome was different. Because this time, when they dug into that ground, the earth gave up what had been hidden inside it. A grave. Shallow, concealed, deliberately dug, and inside it, human remains. Those remains were carefully recovered and taken for forensic examination. And after that examination was completed, the confirmation came through that ended any lingering hope entirely. The remains were Savannah Spurlock. She had been there the entire time, while her family waited, while volunteers searched, while David sat in his home and told anyone who asked that he hoped she was all right and had no idea where she might be. Savannah was buried in the ground just down the road from his front door. She had been there from the very beginning, and it got worse. Because Savannah was not alone in that grave. Buried alongside her remains was a rug, rectangular, gray, an accent rug of the kind that sits in a bedroom. And multiple people who had been inside David's home were able to confirm that rug had been in David's bedroom. It had been there before the night of January the 3rd. And after that night, it was gone. David Sparks was arrested the same morning the identification was confirmed. So who was David Sparks, really? On the surface, and I think this is important to sit with, he did not look like a monster. He was a local man. He had grown up in Garrard County. His parents were nearby. Neighbors described him as quiet, a bit awkward, not particularly social, but broadly unremarkable. Not someone who triggered immediate alarm, not someone who stood out as dangerous. And yet, David had a prior criminal record. It included drug possession charges, traffic violations, and at least one domestic violence-related charge. None of those things alone make a person capable of murder. But they do create a portrait of someone whose behavior had already caused harm before Savannah ever crossed his path. But here is where this case takes a turn that I genuinely was not prepared for the first time I encountered it. When investigators searched David's home, they found something inside his bedroom, tucked inside a box, as if he had put it somewhere he thought was private and secure. A journal. And the entries inside that journal, written in David's own hand, in his own words, apparently over a period of time prior to Savannah's death, were not the writings of a misunderstood loner or a troubled young man looking for an outlet. They were a self-portrait of something far darker. I'm going to read this entry in full, because I think the words need to be heard exactly as he wrote them, and I want you to remember, as you listen to this, that this was found in the bedroom of the man who was the last person to see Savannah Spurlock alive. How do you explain the feelings of nothingness to a normal person? That death befalling on all of those around you has no effect. I have felt so alone, so damaged that I have created fake personas around everyone I know, hoping to fit in, feel accepted. It only makes me angrier. I keep the dark, true side of myself hidden in the deepest places of my mind and have done so successfully for years. I simply do not care at all. I feel no true love for anything. Now that I know what I really am, and I see a greater need to hide my true self. But I just want to be free. I stay in a constant state of aggression. Nothing seems to help anymore. I have an abyss for a soul that sucks every attempt to make myself whole. How do you look your mother in the eyes and tell her that you are born a psychopath? That she gave birth to a monster? Someone who would not care one bit to squeeze the last breath out of another human, or plunge a knife into their chest and smile about it. Written by David Sparks. In his own handwriting, in his own home. That is not a red flag, that is a confession of character, written before anyone even had cause to go looking for it. And if that journal entry left any doubt in your mind at all, the forensic evidence removed it completely. Savannah's blood was found inside David's home, on the door of his bedroom closet. She had never left that house alive. I want to say that one more time because I need it to fully land. She had never, not once, left that house alive. Every word David said to investigators was a lie. The directions he claimed to have given her. The falling back to sleep. The unlocked door. Waking up near midday to find her gone. All of it, every single word of it, was constructed and deliberate and calculated, and told calmly to police while Savannah's body lay concealed in the ground on his parents' property less than a mile away. And while hundreds of volunteers were out there in the freezing cold January air, searching roads and fields and tree lines for any trace of this woman, David Sparks knew. He knew the whole time. He sat with that knowledge for 6 months and said nothing. Nothing. When this case finally arrived at legal proceedings and the lead investigator took the stand to give his testimony, what the courtroom heard was delivered in the flat, factual language of a trained law enforcement professional. And yet, every single word of it was devastating. The body was exhumed from a clandestine grave. It was concealed within multiple black bags. The body was unclothed, the feet were bound with tape, and the body was in an unnatural position. By that, I mean her head and her feet were in the same position. She was folded, over in half. Did you find anything alongside her body? I did. It was what I would describe as an accent rug, rectangular in shape, grayish in color. The court also heard testimony about every interview David had given to law enforcement since the very beginning of the investigation. In every single one of those interviews, every one, David had never once mentioned a missing rug. He had never mentioned blood anywhere in his home. He had never offered any moment of confusion, any small inconsistency, any alternative explanation that might have at least suggested he was genuinely trying to help. He had never said anything like, "Wait, actually, I remember she had a fall," or "There was something on the floor of my bedroom that I could not explain." Nothing. Just the same story. Every time. She asked for directions. He fell back asleep. She was gone when he woke up. Did Mr. Sparks at any time tell you she had a fall and there was blood in his bedroom? He did not. Did he at any time mention that a rug was missing from his home when she left? He did not tell me that. Did he at any point suggest she was still there when he fell back asleep, that she had not already left? No. He stated only that he woke to find her standing outside his bedroom, asking where she was, as if arranging transportation. He fell back asleep. He woke near midday. She was gone. In December of 2020, nearly 2 full years after Savannah walked into that bar in Lexington, David Sparks entered a guilty plea. He was convicted of murder, sentenced to 50 years in prison for that charge, with an additional 5 years imposed for abusing a corpse and tampering with physical evidence, for the year 2039, and will not be considered for parole until the year 2039. And across all of it, every interview, every legal proceeding, every moment where the truth could have come out, David Sparks has never once explained why he killed Savannah Spurlock. Not a single word of explanation, not for her children, not for her mother. Chose to plead guilty before this case went to full trial. Savannah's family was spared the experience of sitting in a public courtroom and hearing every detail of her murder laid out in graphic terms before a jury. And I do understand why, on the surface, that might feel like a kindness. But I want you to think about the other side of that. A guilty plea before trial means no cross-examination. It means no witness box. It means no moment where David Sparks had to sit in front of Savannah's family, under oath, and answer the questions that have been eating at them since January of 2019. Why her? Why that night? What happened inside that house? Did she fight back? How did she die? Those questions will never be answered, not legally, not officially, not ever. And David entered his guilty plea, received his sentence, and has remained silent on the specifics ever since. And I find myself genuinely wrestling with whether that is justice. Because on one hand, yes, Savannah's family did not have to endure a trial. On the other hand, the man who murdered her walked into that plea deal with his secrets intact. He gets to keep them for the rest of his life. He gets to die with them if he chooses, and no one can compel him to speak. Is that justice? Or is it a system that, in trying to protect a grieving family from further pain, accidentally handed a killer his final act of control? I do not have a clean answer to that, and I think the discomfort of not having one is worth sitting with. Because I think the most important thing to understand about the case of Savannah Spurlock, the thing that separates it from other cases, and the thing that makes it genuinely difficult to process, is how ordinary it all began. This was not a premeditated abduction. There was no elaborate scheme. Savannah and David had never met before that night. There was no plan that had been forming over days or weeks or months. None of that. It was a coincidence. David and his friends happened to be in the same bar as Savannah. She happened to have been left alone. They happened to start talking. And the evening happened to move in a direction that brought her back to his home. None of that was designed, none of it was engineered. It was just a sequence of small, ordinary, entirely unremarkable events, the kind of sequence that plays out in bars across the world every single night without ending in tragedy, that in this particular case, on this particular night, ended in murder. And I think that is the part that truly haunts this story, because Savannah did nothing wrong. She did not make a reckless decision. She was not careless. She was not naive. She was a warm, social, outgoing young woman who found herself alone on a rare night out and did what warm, social, outgoing people do. She talked to people. She extended her evening. She trusted a group of strangers the way millions of people trust strangers in bars and restaurants and public spaces every single day of the year. The terrifying truth at the core of this case is not what David did, as horrifying as that is. It is the randomness of how it happened. It is the reminder, painful and deeply unfair, and that sometimes the worst things have nothing to do with the choices of the person they happen to. Sometimes it is just wrong place, wrong time, wrong person standing next to you at 2:30 in the morning. And that thought right there, is what keeps this case alive in the minds of everyone who hears it. Because it could have been anyone. It could have been anyone who was out that night. Anyone who got separated from their friends. Anyone who stayed a little later and struck up a conversation with a stranger. It just happened to be Savannah. 4 children are now growing up without their mother. Twin baby boys who never got the chance to know her. A family carrying a wound that no verdict, no sentence, no number of years behind bars will ever fully close. And a community that searched for 6 months, that gave their time and their effort and their hope, who had to live with the reality of what was eventually found. A Savannah Spurlock, born the 5th of February 1996, mother, daughter, friend, a woman who lit up the room and left 4 children who deserved to grow up with her in it. Loved, missed, and worthy of far more years than she was given. Now, I want to hear from you, and I want to hear specifically, do you think the justice system got this right? David Sparks is behind bars. He will be there for decades. But he entered a guilty plea and has never been made to explain himself. He has never had to sit in a courtroom and answer to Savannah's family in full. He has never disclosed what happened inside that house. Is 50 years enough? Is silence acceptable? Does a guilty plea, which removes the trial and removes the cross-examination and removes the forced reckoning, truly serve the people left behind? Tell me what you think in the comments. I read them all, every single one. And, while you are down there, drop your location and tell me what time it is where you are watching this right now. I mean it when I say this channel reaches places I never expected, and I want to know who is here. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, share it. Because the least we can do for Savannah Spurlock is make sure her name is known and her story is told with the honesty and the care it deserves. If you are new to this channel, welcome to Motives and Methods. This is what we do. True crime, real victims, real evidence. The facts laid bare. Nothing sensationalized, nothing left out. We post new cases every single week. Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on your notifications. And if this video was worth your time, and I hope it truly was, a like takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps more people find stories like this one. Savannah deserved better. Until the next case, stay curious, stay informed, and look after the people around you. This is Motives and Methods. I will see you in the next one.